Well, welcome everyone to episode 9 of the Real Profit, Real Perspective podcast. What does progress really feel like? I'm Connor Malatesta, managing partner at Markoff and Malatesta CPAs, and I am joined by my ordained co-host, Ryan Bannister, owner of One Up Advisors. Ryan, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. I don't know if this has to do with it, but I mean, you calling me ordained and the Pope just died like 2 days ago.
Let me introduce to you, all of our dear listeners, the new Pope, Ryan Bannister.
He's not even a Catholic.
The Protestants are excited. Oh man, not where I thought that was going, but you can't resist a good Pope joke.
Yep.
Particularly when it's topical and they're trying to pick a new one. I definitely think they should name a CPA as Pope, but we're biased.
Yeah, and that's probably a good segue into our episode with what does progress feel like? Because that's got to be grueling in the Pope selection process of progressing. But
Man, I'm really glad I'm not in the running to be Pope, having to worry about that. We figured after the kind of more concrete last week's episode about sales and kind of doing a lot of data dumps and going into the weeds on things, we take a step back and just do a I don't know if debrief is the right word, but just probably more of a therapy session on what does it really feel like to make progress on anything, really. I mean, in this context, it's on your business. For us, we were just talking about how this is technically the 10th episode that we have recorded. And this whole thing has been taking place over the course of about 4 months to go from kind of initial creation until now. And it's one of those weird things when as you progress through something, in a weird way, it always feels, at least for me, maybe I'm fucked up, but it always feels less momentous than I anticipated. But I am wondering if that's just me when you're sitting there looking back and you go, oh, is that all?
I tend to agree with you, man. I think progress is on some fronts really easy to measure, and some fronts it's very ambiguous. And we've been through part of that together. And I go back to our audit background and issuing financial statements for our report. But to anyone who doesn't know what that means, we are essentially giving you the business owners the balance sheet, profit and loss statements, and saying, here you go. So after a grueling process of what can last months, you end
or years.
Yeah,
Let's not forget years.
I could never forget. And
I see it in my nightmares.
Yeah, and you end that process with arguably one of the least exciting products that you can give, And on the other hand, like if you're building a house that you're going to move into, like there are very clear steps of progress for that. And then you have a finished product. But for, businesses and especially those who are providing less or anticlimactic sort of products or services, I think progress gets a little more difficult to to celebrate and enjoy.
Yeah, for me, it's always been, particularly from the business side, because it doesn't, at least when we were issuing audit opinions, there would be that kind of release of, okay, it's over. Now, that entire process pretty much turned into the send PDF over and that's it. Mm-hmm. It's over and done. And then you sit there and go, well, I thought there'd be more, champagne popping. We're just okay, we're done. Cool. Let's move on to the next one. I think what I found with the business though is that, because we are trying to talk to business owners, right? People at various levels, because there's always something you're marching towards, it has a weird way of not having that kind of momentous, we've done it. Again, I do want to preface this with maybe this is just my really fucked up way of looking at things, of keeping myself moving forward. I'm sure we could do a psychoanalysis later in that, but it's that constant. There's just something more, and we don't. There's not the Rocky montage or anything. You're just going through a lot of motions, and it's weird how sometimes it's not until you've looked back and really gone, wow, we actually did a lot. And you're right, this is impressive, but in the moment it feels kind of underwhelming in a weird way.
Yeah, and you know, maybe I'm also in that camp of, man, maybe I'm just screwed up at this point, but I think it's a trait a lot of, at least a lot of business owners have, is that, once you get to your goal or that like milestone that you set for yourself, I have a tendency to immediately be on to the next thing, like the second milestone that I've set for myself halfway through achieving the first one. And at least for like my business, and I don't know, maybe it applies to other areas too, but when I get to a goal, I tend to not celebrate it as much because I think, yeah, this is where I should be. This is where I should have been. Like, we're finally at this point. So now we can get to where I really need to be.
I wonder if this is part of it, just what's been ingrained over the last few years because of having to grind through it. Because it's been, all right, it's really weird in that, when you're on social media with a lot of things, or if you start getting into that, that hustle culture type memes and videos and
Yeah.
stuff, they always have that look of, man, I'm out there grinding and things are happening and I'm going and I'm getting this done and we're getting paid and I'm getting all that paper and blah 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 and really doing all that. And I always watch those and go, do you guys actually have a business? Have you actually gone through this? Because I don't think at any point, again, maybe I'm just messed up from this, but they'll tell you, you got to have that thing that gets you up in the morning and you're excited to wake up in the morning and work on it. I'm like, man, I've never had that. Uh, you usually it's wake up and go, oh my God, it's another day. What happened to yesterday and this week, and I have to continue grinding through. I do wonder, because we are both in professional services like this, if this is maybe just a side effect of the fact that we don't have tangible work product that we create. We effectively talk to people and put numbers together as a lot of what we do, and if that plays into it. And I'm sure somebody, I'm sure there was the contractors out there that would be going, no, after we finish a large project and we get paid and everything, I feel great. And I go, I am glad you guys do. I think this is I think my idea when I pitched this topic was more for the to let people know that it's not always going to feel amazing, and most of the time it's probably going to feel terrible. I mean, I will easily say that starting the business and building it is the hardest thing I have ever done. And not to toot my own horn here, but I did go to a top ranked accounting program in the country whose nickname is Work Forest. And at the time, that was the hardest thing I had ever done, was getting through 5 years of that. Now, in comparison to the emotional, I don't know if toll is the word, but the struggle of the last 5 years, getting through college kind of pales in comparison. I mean, this has been, I'll just be straight, it's been brutal.
It is, man. It is. Same here. Same here. I mean,
It, it,
it's even like even yesterday was a day where for just no reason whatsoever, I'm like, man, this sucks. Like this this is really hard. And I don't know. I've found at least in my 3 years of doing this, like, roll with it is a bad way to tell you to deal with it, but like you just have to accept that. And I don't know. One thing I look back on and say is, I mean, I'm either going to be stressed here sometimes, or I'm going to be stressed at a job working for someone else, and there's not as much relief on that side, right? And like, it's kind of what you sign up for. Like,
yeah.
and maybe in my own twisted ways, like it makes things more fun too. Like,
We've officially Stockholm syndromed ourselves, or no, not Stockholm syndrome. We have Pavloved ourselves into craving the stress of this whole thing.
yeah,
But no,
and
I totally understand what you mean.
I'll make another sports reference too. Like when I play golf, it's it's a
Ooh,
hard
look at
sport.
you playing golf.
It's a hard sport, man, and I'm not particularly
Hard.
good at it either. So, what a lot of people say is that like 99% of your shots are going to suck. And then it's the one really, really good one that just reels you back in and keeps you coming back out to play. I feel like business and this whole process is really similar to that.
I use the word a lot when people ask me how are things going, or how are we getting on, to say, we're just continuing the grind. And it really, there is an element. I know there's people out there that wake up and have a ton of energy and go after things. They're up at 4 in the morning and they do all that stuff. And I think for most people, even, successful business owners that have done it, that's not what it looks like. Or if it is, man, I don't know how the hell they do it. I think they're just built different. It's been more of just a dogged stubbornness to just continue moving forward than it has been this, yes, I feel like every week we're making progress. I mean, I can say this as much as sometimes I really hate to brag like this, but we are technically a 7-digit firm. And whether, 3 years, 5 years, whatever you want to talk about, technically we've been in existence for 3. And that in and of itself is an accomplishment. But
Absolutely.
man, sometimes I go, wow, has that really happened? I really thought that there'd be kind of more to it, if that makes sense. Never mind the fact that it amazes me how fast money disappears. That could be a whole nother episode. But it's been a sometimes I have really felt, particularly over the last couple years. The first year, weirdly enough, wasn't the hardest. When, at least for me, when I got started, that wasn't the hardest year because I still had that naivete. I'm gonna honestly
Yeah.
say that I didn't really know what I was getting into, and it still had that element of, well, if this doesn't work out, then I'm gonna find a job, go do something else. And it hadn't really settled in what this was gonna be like. I think it wasn't really until about the third year where, because year 2 had decent increases in income, and year 3 is where it was good, but it wasn't at the point that I had really wanted. But that's where a lot of it started to really kind of weigh down, of just, what am I doing? Is What have I gotten myself into? What in God's name am I doing? Am I even doing this right? how the hell is it that everybody else that we look at and all these other firms are, look like they have all of this success and stuff, and it doesn't really look that terrible from the outside. And I'm sitting there going, what? Like, am I not as good as I thought I was? Man, what in the hell am I doing wrong? Um,
Yeah.
it's I will say the imposter syndrome still hasn't left, which is weird to say even at this point.
I feel you, man. Well, and since we like specifics on this podcast, what do you do when those like feelings come up, or on the other hand, like to keep yourself kind of motivated or going? I don't know. You know where I'm going with it? Like, what do you do?
How is your answer basically how do you get through it when you're in the midst of depression?
There you go.
um oh man. I don't know if this is healthy. But a lot of it, they say, oh, you can't just push through, and for a good extent you kind of can't, but it really came down to just I felt as if I was trying to make progress in a blizzard, and sometimes it felt that the only thing that was happening was that I was inchworming my way forward on the ground, and about the only thing that I had going on was kind of internally saying, fuck it, I'm just gonna keep doing this. And that was it glamorous? No. Did I have good sleeping patterns? No. Did I have a social life? No. Now, I'm sure there's ways of doing this without doing all of that, but that's kind of what I had to do to get through it. I mean, it really was
Yeah.
a just don't quit type thing, even if, and this is something I still struggle with, but even if you're only making the most infinitesimal progress over the course of a week, it really turned into don't look at, honest to God, don't look at where you're trying to go. Just focus on what's literally right in front of you. What do I have to do today? I think what I had to do to cope was basically stop looking forward and stop planning for the future,
Mm.
and just literally taking it one single day at a time. Instead of I've got these grand plans for, the next 6 months or this next year. It was just okay, let's just get through today.
Yeah.
And then we'll wake up tomorrow at some point and do it again. And then we'll do it again. And then we'll try and do it again and again and again and again. And it really was again, I have no idea if this was healthy or how I should have done this at the time. But it really just turned into well, if I keep doing this shit, eventually something else will happen. And it took a while. I mean, it honest to God didn't really feel like I hit my stride with this whole thing until 4 to 4.5 years in.
Yeah.
Honest to God. Like it wasn't until last summer when I finally had a better understanding of what I wanted to do with my business. It took 4 long ass years of grinding through and just screwing so much up and losing, I hate to put it this way, but probably a solid $100,000 worth of work in engagements that were messed up and stuff like that, to finally get a kind of clarity and sense of purpose. And I still have times where, it's like that kind of weird, you lose sight of what next week is going to be, and you just get kind of fixated on tomorrow and all that.
Right.
And I don't know. It's just been a grind. Honest to God, is about the only way I can kind of say it really has been, but it has just been a grind forward. I guess I put this episode forward because I just wanted to vent. You
It's
know, it's
really
like,
interesting
hey,
though, man. I mean, a lot of it gets so glorified and really easy to like look into the future that you do kind of forget about today, and just it gets hard when you are feeling stuck like that, I guess, but you just have to keep showing up at some point and do it.
it really, when they say that the only way to really fail is to quit, that's a sentence that I had heard many times, but I didn't really understand that. When you hear something and you get what they're trying to tell you,
Yeah.
but then you go through the thing that it's talking about and you sit there and you go, oh,
Yeah.
that's what they meant.
That's like when I first started my firm, somebody told me you just have to exist for 3 years and things will get going. Like things will turn around. And I think you don't realize how long 3 years can feel until you get to that point and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah. What do you mean just exist? And then you're a year and a half in and you're like, you know what? We'll try and exist through we'll just today. We'll just deal with today.
Yep.
And because you always end up feeling bad when you see the YouTube shorts or I don't go on TikTok, but you go on Reddit or stuff like that, and TikTok content gets cross posted there. Thank you, Reddit. And they have all the motivational stuff for the guys, or what the hell is it? I know this one will again make it topical, but there was a viral meme of, I think the guy's name was Ashton Hall,
Oh
and
yeah.
the
Yeah.
one with like the ice in his face and all that, and up at like 3 a.m. and journaling and stuff. And all I
Yep.
can think of as I'm watching that is there is no fucking way anybody wakes up at 4 a.m. and journals. No.
No, absolutely not.
I no. The only people journaling at 4 a.m. have been up since the previous day, and you're probably not having a good time. It's this like but it's that visage of, this is what a really successful person looks like. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, most of that's performance art. Also, the dude goes to bed at like 7 p.m. And I went, okay, you sleep 8 hours. Technically, I work more than you.
Well, if you're
Ooh.
still like getting 8 hours, like what's the difference of just shifting the times?
No, no, no. You don't understand. When you get up early, that's how you get in touch with the dog in you. Inside you are two dogs. One wants to sleep until noon. The other one's on crack. You gotta feed crack to the crack dog, and then you're gonna get successful. Uh, Meanwhile, in reality, it's like, oh, what does it look like to be successful? You fucking wake up in the morning, stagger out of bed, make coffee, make breakfast, get to work. You don't have an elaborate hour and a half long routine or anything. It's just up,
Hmm.
you know, up and grind, as they say. But the reality of it doesn't look as cool for YouTube or TikTok, where it's, what did you do? Well, I got up, made coffee, sat down in my chair at 9 o'clock, and then I got up to be done for the day at 7 p.m. And yeah, that was the day. That was it. That's all we did. And it's just a time lapse of sitting there talking on the computer and answering phone calls. But that doesn't look sexy or get clicks or anything. But that, I mean,
Yep.
now for us, it's because we have desk jobs, and so we just sit. But even when it's, when you're dealing with in the trades or whatever it is, it's still, they know it's a fucking grind.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%, man. And I don't know. It's just tough. Just tough. But like I said, I mean, what I always go back to is I could just be doing this in a job and that would
Hmm.
be equally as awful or worse.
Yeah.
So what's the worst that can happen? Well, if you go bankrupt, all you just have to do is give all your stuff back and then you can start over. So
Yeah. I mean, we've talked a lot about you in the beginning and the mistakes you've made. So let's continue to bring up your failings. Uh,
I'm
we've
cool with
talked
that.
enough about my failings. Let's talk about let me deflect here a little bit. But in the beginning parts, but particularly those first couple years where I know we talked a lot, and I know that was a struggle. What really was that like when we weren't on the phone kind of giving each other, rah-rahs, we're gonna get through this.
Yeah.
What was it like for you trying to get through that?
Well, thanks for asking.
All those memories that you have definitely just hidden deep down and are nice and buried.
Let's bring
Well,
all those back up to
I
the
got my
surface.
shovel and I got a pickaxe and I am digging up them skeletons.
Oh man. Oh, well, honestly, a lot of it is really similar to what you were describing earlier. And I mean, there's just like days where, and it's changed a little bit, but a lot of it is still kind of the same. In like, there's good days and there's bad days, and then there's days where they're just indifferent. Like you just sit there for hours and something might get done. But like on the bad days, it those were definitely a lot more common in the early part when you're just like trying to do this thing and traction is really hard to get. You just keep grinding and you're like, what am I doing wrong or not doing, or what am I doing right is probably the better question to ask at that point.
The answer is nothing.
Yeah.
You sit there and you go, I'm not doing any of this right, Jesus Christ.
And that's where the real questions come in, But it's like we've talked about in other episodes. I mean, you just have to be, I think you have to be willing to have those days and stick it out through that point and be honest with yourself to know that, like, I think if you're at that point, there's things you can improve on, and you have to identify what those things are and how you can get better at it to
Hmm.
change the situation that you're in. Like, last episode was a whole thing on that for me with sales. And that was one of my big problems. So, just being able to have that self-awareness, or friends or accountability partners, or whatever the term you,
Hmm.
you describe them with, like other people who can break you out of that thing or that loop too. But
So let me ask you something incredibly personal on air that other people are going to
ooh,
listen to. Because this is something I have been curious about. Um, you've been married the entire time you've been in business.
yes, yeah,
I believe
yep.
so. How did having a spouse help, hinder, or kind of play into getting through it? Because I can talk about what it's like to go through it being single, but that's really depressing. So, what what was it like for kind of that part with the relationship and going through it, and how did you guys get through everything?
Yeah, dude, that's such a good question. And that honestly is probably the most fortunate thing for me, I guess, is like having Kathleen here. And, even though some of the struggles or experiences she can't directly like relate to
Mm-hmm.
because she's not doing it, but it's been nice to have somebody that's supportive of it the entire way, even when things have been like in the dumps, you know? And that's where I've reflected and seen, I think I've been really, really fortunate, is like, having a spouse that isn't always like asking me, uh, like when the business is going to be profitable or something like
Are,
that.
are
Or
are we rich yet? Are we
like,
rich
why
yet?
don't you just go get a job or something like that? There was never anything like that. It's just always been full support, even if, I'm sure she's had her own doubts in her head, just like I mean, I've had them in mine too. You know, everyone does, but it's yeah, that's been a great part about it. And the financial aspect of it is that her job was able to pay the bills with, along with our part of our savings, and you know, not depleting too much. But
Hmm.
yeah, that was the other half of it that was lucky for me, is having somebody to kind of bankroll this whole operation. And yeah, so that was great. It's I think the biggest thing that's changed recently is having our son, which changed things a lot in the hours that I work, the
Hmm.
structure of my days, and things are smoothing out now. He's 15 months old. So like this time last year was really rough, between like he was born January. So
Hmm.
the first like 6 months were really hard. My wife was in a different job where she was out of the house all day, and then I think it was about August of last year she changed and got a work from home job. So we're both at home full time now, and that's really helped like this my days um, get a little easier to get the work done in. But yeah, that was a big change for things too. So it's like lots of big life changes going on when you start a business and lose all that income, and then having a child who takes even more income away from you.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah.
Isn't it fun to have all that hit at the same time?
So I've joked about that before. Like, I'm glad I like to do hard things, because I did, I think, three of the hardest things you can ever do, like all within 2 or 3 years of each other.
I mean, the good part is we started our careers as financial auditors, so we're already used to emotional abuse.
Yeah, I'm already beat down.
It's like you can't break me anymore. I've been broken. No, it's that's always something I've really wondered about, was particularly when you've got that spousal support and stuff like this, or like that. I'm not going to turn this into a pity party or anything like that, but I've been living at home through the whole process, and having the support of the parents and stuff has been nice, and they definitely helped in the beginning when I to cut down on expenses and stuff. But it has been one of those of a there has been a good portion of this process where it has just been a large feeling of being alone.
Mm,
And it that really, I think those were the parts that was the hardest to get through, because it was they've got their own stuff going on, and it's not the same kind of support, you know. And it really, there were definitely some parts in there where it was like, I don't know if I'm broken yet. It feels like I'm heading towards there. It's one of those where I laugh about it now, because otherwise, it's like if you can't laugh, you cry.
yep.
But it really, the and I think, I don't want to sound let me try and put this thought together, because I think the hard part with what we do compared to other businesses out there, trades or things like that, is that a lot of times we are basically wrapped up in our own heads. Everything we do is, it's on the computer, but it all effectively boils down to
Yeah.
mental stuff, right? And I have had, for example, some contractors that I've talked to as they were building their businesses and stuff like that, and there was that element of, they appreciated that they could get home and basically be, even though they were working their way through the jobs and all that, they could get home and work was done, and that was it. And the thing I've struggled with how kind of mental a lot of our stuff is that it's always fucking there.
Hmm.
And when you grind through the day without the physical component, and you're just mentally exhausted but physically you aren't, it's a weird thing. I'm not going to say, oh, this is harder to do than a physical job or anything like that, or working in the trades, because it's absolutely not. I would much rather be at a desk job. I have quite a few clients I think would kick my ass if I tried to say something like that, and they'd be totally justified. My dad was a contractor. I've been through it. I do prefer this, but there is a weird component of it where when you're in that kind of work, or you're just everything's in your head, it just fucking sucks. there's there's no eloquent way to put it. You're just constantly, it's just it really is this constant grind, and there were good parts of it where I'm just, I had bits where I was just working, grinding away on stuff, and realized that I didn't really leave the house or go do a whole lot, and hadn't really talked to anyone in a few
Yeah.
days. And I'm like, oh, no wonder why I'm fucking spiraling here.
Yeah, totally.
And it's just this, that when they talk about the like muck and depression and all that, it's like, yep, been there. At some point, got through it. It wasn't Jesus. It wasn't pretty. I guess my takeaway from this is, for people listening that can have, that spousal support is important, having that person to help you and support you through it. And I'm not a marriage counselor, but if somebody's being really antagonistic, and that's who you're married to, and they're not kind of with you and supporting and all that, well, you may want to consider that.
Yeah, and that for me at least was a very long process of expectations. And
Yeah.
that was something I was talking about, I think probably since the day I met Kathleen, is like, I want to eventually own my own business. I don't know when or where or what it is, but
Or how or anything related, but I know what I'm doing.
start prepping yourself now. So, it's not just like April 3 years ago, I sprung this thing on her and she was totally supportive. No, it was a buildup of lots of different things and good business plan and sound logic that it worked in my favor. So,
And I'm sure there's, what was it, episode 7 about communication. I'm sure a key component of it is actual clear communication between you guys.
yeah, and on the other side of that too, work being like ever present can be a detriment to the communication part of other relationships. Like when you're like, you have with your phone work constantly in your hand and on your brain, like that's the downside of the of all the great stuff I was sharing earlier.
Yeah, it's always there. It's that constant connection, always, next to the mind and stuff. And I think one of the hardest things is when it is a grind like that, that you get that it wears you down, and if you're really not careful, resentment towards the fucking existence at life, when you're sitting there and nothing seems to be going according to plan, and you keep doing things and it's not working, and you're trying other things and it's not working again, you're gonna end up basically lashing out at everything because it just sucks, and it is really hard to prevent resentment from, creeping in. I'm Like I said,
100%.
I'm not in a spousal relationship, but I do have a business partner, and it really, I have been learning the wisdom behind my grandparents, who said that a marriage is like a business partnership. And yeah, that definitely had some truth to it. But we even found, when we weren't careful and didn't communicate, that same thing would happen when stuff was not working. That resentment starts to creep in towards the other person, and it's not even their fucking fault. It's that emotional part that sucks, because it feels so goddamn real. And it is, I don't know, I got through it by going through it, is about the only way.
Yep.
Communicating a little more, but it's I don't know what the learning lesson from this one's supposed to be.
I think you hit it on the head. Like, honestly, when we first started, like, it's a place to know where, or for people to hear that, I mean, you're not alone for sure. And it does suck, more, more often than not, probably.
Yeah, the successes sometimes feel a little too short-lived because particularly when you start to really focus on what can I do better. And man, that can turn into a negative feedback loop real quick of the constant. Because despite all of our best attempts, nobody is perfect, and most of us going through this are making more mistakes than we even, realize. And it's so easy to focus on all the little imperfections in things and stuff and just constantly beat ourselves down. And sometimes I think my biggest takeaway from things that I've learned about myself over the last 5 years is almost to use almost a religious connotation, but to actually give myself a little bit of grace that I am allowed to fucking suck at times. Which is hard for me to do because I also really hate losing. I hate losing. Oh my God, do I hate losing? It's probably the one that I think that for me has been my core thing that has pushed me through is my absolute detest towards losing regardless of, what it is.
Yep.
And but it was kind of allowing that to die a little bit and giving myself grace to say, hey, I'm not allowed to be perfect this week. We're gonna be eh. We're gonna be meh at most, good enough, passable. We'll deal with shit next week, but
Yeah.
this is all I can do right now to deal with it.
That was almost my exact takeaway as well, is, and that's the word I was going to use, is like, just give yourself some grace, like let yourself kind of feel those ups and the downs and realize, like, I mean, that's what we signed up for as business owners, and that's the life of it,
Signed up without even realizing it.
And I think it's like, I think it was from David Goggins, a quote that I picked up, but it's, tricking yourself with with mediocrity and saying like, all right, if I let myself kind of slack today, the next time we're really going to get at it. And
Hmm.
more times than not, if you do that, like even that same day, you're still going to do more than you thought, because you like let yourself get to that point. Like if you do one push up and we're wanting to do 10, your brain is going to say, oh, we did one, let's do two.
Yeah.
And keep going from there. So
Yeah, I think I've definitely used all I can handle doing today is just this. And it got it to take a while to be able to do this, which is always weird. Um, Man, it is amazing what you learn about yourself through this whole
yeah,
whole process, particularly when it's mental. I mean, it really, nothing really shows you your shortcomings better than putting yourself in a situation where you truly are the end all be all, and all of that has to kind of confront you. And I know there's
yep,
plenty of people out there that break when they're put into that situation, and I honest to God cannot blame them for not wanting to be in that situation because I'm pretty
yep.
certain to a certain extent it does take a special kind of fucked up to want
Yep.
to be to want to be pushed to that extreme ends up taking some will say, it's a winner's mentality. I go, you know what? I don't blame the people that want the stability and all that.
Hmm.
I really, really don't, because it's a brutal process that ends
Yeah.
up testing everything you've got far more than you ever realize. And honestly, I'm sure much the same way that having a kid tests you in ways that you didn't even know were possible.
It is very similar. And past that point, like when you do have the days that suck, like at least for me, a lot of the times I'll just say, fuck it, I'm taking the day off, or I'm going to go do this outside, or I'm
Yeah.
going to go hit this nail with a hammer or something like that.
Uh,
And say, like, that's the perk of being a business owner or working for yourself, is you can do that. If you're I mean, you're going to, like I said, five times, you're either going to be stressed in this job or you're going to be stressed at a day job. And you can't just like walk out of a day job. I can just walk out of this for a day or an hour, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I mean it's one of those where, I've tried to tell people that I've talked to about the experience. You're going to have bad days, bad weeks, bad months. Might be a bad year or years.
Yeah.
It You will eventually get through it. It won't. I think my takeaway from this, what I would want anyone listening to kind of understand, is that if you're going through this whole thing and you feel like you don't know what the fuck you're doing, you don't think you're making the right decisions, every time you make a plan it's not working out, that that's that is the process. That is normal. That is what every business owner has gone through when everything is just, you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Hmm.
It's there. For what worth platitudes and affirmations are. God knows I've listened to them. They go, "You're gonna make it." I'm like, no, the fuck, I'm not. Uh, that's easy for you to say. You're recording on YouTube, and I'm currently staring at a problem I don't know how to fix, or if it's even fixable, or what's gonna happen tomorrow. But no, you go ahead. Warm,
Yep.
comforting voice on YouTube. Tell me it's gonna be okay. But it the weird thing, it will eventually. You just have to grind through it, I think. Is Again, it's only my experience. I don't know if other people have gone through and it's been easier and it was just us that are the idiots in how we went through this whole thing. Even though I'm pretty certain I would never recommend anyone to start a business as early as I did with as little experience as I had at the time. But that's fine. That's over in the past. But this is the process. It's not pretty, it's not glamorous, it's not sexy. It's a grind, it's a slog. It fucking sucks.
Hmm.
But eventually you will get through it if you just don't fucking quit.
Amen.
All right, well, that's our little emotional pick me up from this whole thing. Spend a whole bunch of talking sales tactics and figured, hey, let's have an emotional episode here
That's
and
the that's
really
the
get
real
into it.
perspective, man.
Didn't want to leave something like this for episode 30 or 40 when, most people start in the beginning or are going through a lot of this stuff, and I've been talking to clients that are going through the same thing as well. So figured, what better time than now to kind of do this and, try and just make sure we keep that kind of mix of, hopefully more concrete examples versus, the emotional or the personal aspect of doing all this stuff. And honestly, even if you're not a business owner, if you're doing anything really worth doing or doing something new, it's always hard because it really is one of those, if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Hmm.
Because there's a lot of
Absolutely.
people out there who do take the easiest of paths. And so if something's easy, a lot of people will do it. And usually the things that are life-changing, that are worthwhile, that are really memorable, it's fucking hard, harder than you
Hmm.
ever realize. But, you know, just don't fucking quit and you can get through. But
Love it.
next episode, we'll try and talk a little more concrete, get away from the emotions here, and kind of talk through how do you build a team. So we'll see you all then.